Now, welcome to part 4 of my story that will, in a way, both carry on the Star Wars sequel trilogy or continue the journey of some of its characters, while also sort of rewriting or undoing the story of the sequels at the same time. Or, as I like to put it, this is a story of how what comes next will change what came before. And if you're new to the story or haven't seen the first couple parts yet, I'd highly recommend starting with part 1, and if you enjoy it, working your way back to this one. Otherwise, what's going on right now in the story really won't make any sense to you whatsoever, and a link to the playlist can be found in the description below. Also, my apologies for not getting a new part up last week. Hopefully that will be the last time it happens with this series. Anyway, without further ado, let's get back to the story. We're right where we left off before, on a strange world where a squad of stormtroopers had been tasked with recovering a Force-sensitive child, or the child we know to be named Grogu. However, while the squad waited for Mara Jade, whose life was saved by Finn after nearly being killed by New Republic forces who had tracked them to this world, the pirates in possession of the child were able to make their escape to who knows where. So now we're back with Finn, who has quickly come to realize he was likely sent back to this exact time and place by Ezra for a very good reason, and he's walking away from Mara Jade due to her continued loyalty to Palpatine, who will eventually destroy everything if he comes back. And so we now watch as a stormtrooper, apparently given orders by Grand Admiral Thrawn, takes aim and fires at Finn's back. But the very instant the blaster goes off, Mara ignites one of her sabers and not only blocks the bolt, but directs it right back into the chest of the trooper that fired. And after a moment of disbelief and confusion, the other few remaining troopers raise their weapons and point them in Mara's direction, but only one of them even gets a shot off, one that's easily deflected, before Mara cuts them down as well. Holding her side where there is still a severe, albeit bandaged, wound from her encounter with New Republic forces, Mara turns to see Finn on the ground, having apparently dove to it as soon as the first blaster went off. As Mara's making her way over to him, wincing in pain as she does, Finn quickly gets to his feet, brushes himself off, and says to Mara, "Why? Why did you save my life?" "Because Thrawn wanted you dead," she says back, causing Finn to stare blankly at her for a bit, before shaking his head in confusion and saying, That makes no sense." "Exactly," Mara responds, only further confusing Finn. She then explains, "Everything Thrawn does is calculated. He never acts rashly or makes an uninformed decision if he can help it. If he ordered you killed, that means he not only knows everything about you that he feels he needs to, but that he also fears you for some reason." Looking even more perplexed, Finn responds, "But if he wants me dead, wouldn't that mean you should want me dead?" Mara gives him a cold look and says, "Maybe. I still have the luxury of changing my mind at any moment and killing you if I want." Finn obviously seems a little shaken to hear that, and says, "But why would he fear me? How could he even know me? In this time, I don't even think I'm born yet." Saying that seems to trigger something in Finn's mind, as if he's realizing he's more than likely in a time period very, very shortly before his birth, and shortly before the First Order took him away from his parents, that he doesn't remember at all, but that he was looking for in the future. But before he can think on that too much, Mara says, "It must have been something you said that the trooper reported to him, a name perhaps." Mara thinks for just a moment before blurting out, "Ezra Bridger, of course. Thrawn disappeared with him years ago, and while he came back, Ezra never did." Mara thinks for another moment before continuing, Maybe Thrawn knows all about what Ezra can do. Maybe he thought Ezra was dead. Maybe he thought he killed him himself. But now he fears he survived somehow and sent you back to stop him from rebuilding the Empire, or this First Order, or whatever you said it becomes under Brendel Hux." As Mara continues to try to fit all the pieces together in her head, Finn asks, "And so, what does this all mean for you? Because Thrawn's not wrong. I'm here to stop the Empire, to stop Palpatine's return, because it will end everything." Mara then stares at Finn for a while, at the man who saved her life, and says with a somewhat apologetic look on her face, "I can't betray my Emperor." Finn then glances down and sees that though one of her hands is still on her bandaged wound, the other has a white-knuckled grip on an unignited lightsaber. He says to her, "Your Emperor died. You can be free of him." But Mara shakes her head. "No, you don't understand the power of the dark side, of Palpatine. I will never be free of him." But Finn shakes his head and takes a step towards her. "You're wrong. I do understand the power of the dark side, of Palpatine. I saw it turn someone I care about, someone I thought was genuinely good, into an absolute monster. Finn shuts his eyes a moment, fighting back the pain and thinking about Rey, the Rey he once knew and not what she became. He then continues, "But that monster, it's not really her. I know the real her. Just like I know that this isn't the real you. That someone and something better is inside there somewhere. Something stronger than the dark side." Many different emotions seem to take hold of Mara all at once, and it's impossible to know what she's thinking or feeling. But suddenly her face becomes grim, angry even, and she ignites the lightsaber in her hand and raises it like she's going to strike down Finn. But instead she uses the Force to shove Finn to the side, just as a green lightsaber, wielded by a Falleen, dressed like a Jedi, splits the air where he was standing. "Friend of yours?" Mara asks as she blocks a swing from the Falleen aimed at her now. Finn scrambles back to his feet, shaking his head as he does and saying, "Not exactly. He came through the portal shortly before I did." Mara then quickly looks over the Falleen, seeing the Jedi robes and the green saber, and so she says to him, "For a Jedi, I sure sense plenty of anger from you." The Falleen quickly retorts, "And I sense a great deal of conflict coming from one who claims to be devoted to our master." Mara, looking confused, says back, "Our master?" The Falleen then says, "I serve Sidious, but unlike you, I will not fail him." He then unleashes a quick series of serpent-like strikes that pushes the wounded Mara Jade back. For a moment, Finn looks helplessly around, then spots a blaster rifle nearby, dropped by one of the fallen stormtroopers, and he quickly makes for it, picks it up, and fires a few shots at the Falleen. But the Falleen quickly turns and deflects them right back at Finn, one of which grazes his arm and causes him to drop the blaster. But Mara takes that moment to turn the tables and to press the attack, and with the Falleen on his heels a bit, Mara takes a second to grab the other saber from her belt, the Skywalker saber, and tosses it to Finn, saying to him as he catches it, "I hope you know how to use that." Finn ignites it, looks over the shimmering blue blade a moment, and nods as a slight smile of remembrance crosses his face. He then says that, yeah, he has some experience with it, and some training under his belt now too. He then moves and attacks, but Mara and Finn work as anything but a well-oiled machine together, and if anything, Finn is more in the way than any kind of actual help to Mara, which only seems to amuse the Falleen, who says to Finn, "Ah, the untrained one. Hard to believe my master actually considers you a great threat." Once again being called that name, the untrained one, seems to irritate Finn, and he makes a rather wild attack that under normal circumstances probably would have left him off balance and open for a quick and deadly counterattack. But with most of his concentration on Mara, it manages to catch the Falleen off guard just enough to leave an opening for Mara, who then slices out with her saber and catches the Falleen across the midsection. Finn then finishes the job by plunging his saber into the chest of the Falleen, who moments later simply falls over dead. Finn, grinning from ear to ear, turns to Mara and is about to say something, likely to celebrate their victory, but he sees an extremely weary and completely disoriented look on her face, like she's about to just drop over. She then manages to say, with a small smile, "Nice work, untrained one," before falling to the ground unconscious. Finn drops to her side, looking her over from head to toe, as if expecting to find that the Falleen had somehow landed an attack he hadn't noticed, but he finds nothing and briefly looks utterly perplexed. But then his eyes focus on the bandage on her side, and he carefully removes it to see that the blaster wound she suffered there, the one he attended to, has apparently been aggravated and reopened, and that it is now infected with some type of strange red fungus or spore that has the whole area inflamed. As if it looks familiar somehow, Finn's head pops up and he looks all around and sees that the strange red fungus also covers most of the barks of the trees all around him in the area. He then very quickly looks himself over and sees that on his arm, where he was grazed by a deflected blaster bolt, a couple of these red spores are already gathering. That's when we're taken somewhere else entirely, somewhere far away and in deep space, where we see a lone Star Destroyer. On the bridge of that Star Destroyer, calmly looking out upon the endless sea of stars, and wearing a pristine white Imperial uniform, is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Soon enough, another officer approaches him and says, "Sir, no word from our strike team on Elzuna, or from Mistress Jade herself. Perhaps they were wrong and failed to neutralize all the pirates, and Mistress Jade and her team were then overtaken by..." But the officer falls silent with his speculation when it's clear that Thrawn is not thinking the same. Thrawn then says, "No, Commander. It was not the pirates who took out our strike team. The commander, confused, then says, "The prisoner, then, could he have somehow overpowered them?" Thrawn replies, "Perhaps. His full capabilities are indeed unclear to us, as are many details about him. Too many details for Mistress J to see my order carried out, it seems." It takes the commander a few moments to piece it all together. Are you saying Mistress Jade has turned on us, Admiral?" Thrawn replies, "It is unlikely our goals are no longer aligned, unless this Finn is an even greater threat than I first feared, one that has turned her heart and mind, which seems unlikely given her devotion to Palpatine. More than likely, her curiosity simply got the better of her, and it is only a matter of time before she carries out my order." The commander nods his head as if that all makes perfect sense to him, and he seems a bit relieved when an officer from elsewhere on the bridge calls out, drawing Thrawn's attention away from him, "Admiral, incoming communication from General Hux." Thrawn gives a single nod of the head to the officer who spoke, and appearing before him now is a full-sized, bluish hologram of General Brendel Hux, father of General Armitage Hux, from the sequel trilogy era. And it's Hux who immediately speaks. "Am I to understand, Grand Admiral, that the Emperor's lackey has failed, that Mara Jade has failed to capture the child after we wasted so much time and resources to finally locate him?" Thrawn glances at the first officer who reported to him, at the commander, and that commander now lowers his head, refusing to make eye contact with Thrawn. Thrawn then looks at General Hux and says, "It seems news travels fast, and yes, I fear it is true. They have failed to secure the child." Hux then shakes his head in disgust. "Why you have so much faith in her is beyond me. If she was truly such an asset, why was she not the one at our glorious Emperor's side instead of Vader?" Thrawn seems almost amused by those words and then says, "Mistress Jade was much better at subtlety and working in the shadows. Keeping her there at all times, unknown to most, was a wise decision by our Emperor. While Lord Vader, on the other hand, was, shall we say, better at intimidation. He was more of a blunt instrument used for many different purposes, and kept very visible for those reasons." Hux only snorts as if he doesn't know how to respond to that, but then says, "Well, perhaps the blunt approach is what's needed here. Perhaps it's time for one of Lord Vader's favorite tactics. We turn to the Bounty Hunters Guild. Let them find the child for us." Thrawn's head tilts ever so slightly, as if calculating how foolish or wise that would be. He then says, "I will consider your suggestion, General." But Hux quickly snaps back, "It wasn't a suggestion, Admiral. I've already put Gideon in charge of everything. He'll deliver the child where your little assassin has failed." Next thing we know, we're looking at Mara Jade sleeping comfortably on a med table in some type of dreary medical facility, one located who knows where exactly. And as her eyes flutter open, she finds herself looking up and into the large dark eyes of a Kaminoan, one who grins as much as a Kaminoan can. When he sees her waking up, he then says, "How impressive that I was able to save you, considering how far along your infection was. I do never cease to amaze myself." Mara then quickly says, "Who are you? Where am I? How did I get here?" The Kaminoan responds, "My name is Seirch, but you can call me Dr. Search, as many do. As for how you got here..." She and we then hear Finn's voice say, "I brought you here. It was the only place I could find after you passed out because of those spores." Finn then appears above her, standing next to the doctor, and he continues, "Or should I say he found me and brought us here. This lab is hidden way underground." It's the doctor who then says, "And how very lucky you were that I found you. The spores cover most of this world, and one scratch is all it usually takes for them to quickly claim you. This world is mostly uninhabited for that very reason." Mara then says back, "And yet these pirates were hiding here of all places, and you seemed well aware of them if you were able to find us." Dr. Search then responds, "Yes, those pirates were here, mostly because of me, I suppose." Mara sits up, finds herself a bit woozy, but still gives an intense look to the doctor as she says one word, "Explain." The doctor then says, "It is a bit of a long story." "I have time," Mara says, her face darkening. Dr. Search nods and begins, "Well, in that case, it all started after the Clone Wars ended. Myself and a few other Kaminoans who had once brought the clone army to life for the Republic, were given a new task by the Empire. Which was, Mara demands when he falls silent. To unlock the secrets of life, of the Force itself. One of our goals was to create the perfect soldier, while the other, the more secret one that myself and only a few others were tasked with, was to create the perfect being, or to create the perfect body, the perfect host, you could say, one that would not age or ever die. Mara and Finn exchange a look, and then Mara gives the doctor a look, politely encouraging him to continue. It, of course, sounded nearly impossible, if not for the fact that such a being or species basically already exists. Dr. Search then taps at a datapad that he was holding, and soon enough an image of two beings that we recognize appear, those beings being Yaddle and Yoda. And when they do, Mara mutters to herself, Yoda? She then says louder, but Yoda did age. He was ancient during the time of the Clone Wars. Dr. Search nods his head in agreement, but then says, yes, but they do not age naturally. The only way they age is if they give of themselves, you could say. If they give or expend their own essence, which allows them to do truly incredible things, including heal. Finn then shakes his head and interrupts. But I've seen other Jedi heal, one that doesn't look anything like them. Mara then gives him a questioning look and asks, where have you seen Force healing? Rey, Finn says. She could do it. I saw her do it. Mara thinks a moment, then says, Rey, you mean the one who becomes Palpatine? Did she heal before or after he took her over? Before, Finn blurts out. And it's at this point that Dr. Search says, I would very much love to know what it is you two are talking about. It all sounds quite fascinating. After all, I have been very generous with information, so it's only fair. But Mara cuts him off. It's nothing for you to worry about. Now tell us, what did you have to do with these pirates? Dr. Search frowns and says, yes, of course. Well, you see, they must have somehow learned about me, that I was once a part of this project for the Empire, and sought me out here. And with them they had a child that they said they'd been protecting since the Clone Wars, but had yet to age a day in all that time. Finn then turns and looks at Mara. So this child you're looking for, you knew it was one of them, one of their kind, he finishes, looking at Yaddle and Yoda. Mara nods and looks a little defensive as she says back, of course I knew. Palpatine has been looking for the child for as long as I've served him. I just didn't know exactly why, what he might be capable of. I thought Palpatine wanted to turn him to the dark side, for a new apprentice. Finn then shakes his head in disbelief. So you thought your master had sent you off in search of your replacement, and you were okay with that? You Sith are unbelievable. But Mara snaps back, I'm no Sith, and I never was his apprentice. That honor was never mine. Finn gives a bit of a roll of the eyes. Yeah, some honor it must be, serving someone who doesn't care at all about you, only about what you can do for them. Mara then retaliates. It's not about compassion or friendship. It was about getting knowledge and power from him. It's about what they can do for us, just as much as what we can do for them. Finn then gives a shrug and says, yet even with him dead and gone, you still serve him. Make sense of that for me. Mara opens her mouth like she wants to, but no words come out. During this whole little debate then, Dr. Search has been looking back and forth between the two as they talk, and now he says, I would so very much like to know what it is you two are talking about. Mara then says, I bet you would. So these pirates, they brought the child to you, and then what? What exactly did they want? They wanted to see the child age so that one day he could fend for himself. Mara shrugs. If they wanted to be rid of it, why not sell it to the Empire or to anyone else? They had to have figured out how valuable this child was. Dr. Search then quickly says, you misunderstand. They did not simply want to be rid of the child. They worried about his future, when they wouldn't be around to protect him anymore. Mara then looks taken aback. Wait, these pirates truly cared about the child? Dr. Search only nods, and then Mara, after looking baffled for a moment, asks, so what did you learn about him, about this child? Dr. Search again taps some buttons on the datapad, and the projected image of Yaddle and Yoda turns into what appears to be the close-up of a living cell, one active with all sorts of movement. He then says, I, of course, ran many tests on the child, but the most fascinating results were his M count. Finn then butts in and asks, M count? What's that? Mara explains, They're microscopic organisms that reside in all cells, but they're especially attracted to individuals strongly connected to the Force. The more you have in your cells, the more powerful you usually are with the Force, but it's not always a perfect indicator. Those who embrace the dark side tend to lose M count, until they get to the point where they sometimes become deformed or disfigured. Dr. Search nods along with all that, and then says, "The child's count was absolutely off the charts, unlike anything I had ever seen. And if he could be cloned..." He then falls silent, as if pondering all the possibilities. Mara then asks, "And can he be cloned?" Dr. Search responds, "Oh, he can be cloned easily enough, but the tricky part is cloning that strength with the Force, or figuring out why some are strong with it while others are not. What is it about his cells and the cells of all of his species that makes for a being so powerful with the Force? That is what we were trying to figure out, and we were very close when I left." Mara looks up at him, her eyes a bit accusing, as she asks, "And why did you leave? Why come here to study spores, or whatever you're here to do?" Dr. Search shrugs casually and says, "Many of us left after the Empire fell, to pursue our own goals once again." Mara continues to stare at him like she's trying to figure him out, which is when Finn blurts out, "It all makes sense," which causes the other two to give him a bit of an incredulous look. Finn then says to Mara, "The Empire's mission here to capture the child would have succeeded if not for me saving your life. We really changed everything. They would have gone on to figure out how to clone him, or how to make cells strong with the Force, I guess. And it would have led to Rey. That's how she could heal. That's why she was so strong with the Force." While Mara is processing all that, Dr. Search then says, "And speaking of strong with the Force," he then taps at a few buttons on his datapad again, and a new image of a cell replaces the other, one not quite as teeming with movement as the last one. Mara studies it for a moment and then asks, Is that from me? Is my M count really that high?" Dr. Search gives a slight shake of the head and hits some more buttons on the datapad, and now a cell almost devoid of any movement whatsoever appears. "No, I'm afraid this one was yours." Mara then stares at it with a look on her face like she's trying to mask how shocked and horrified she is. "It's so low," she mutters to herself. She quickly shakes her head as if trying to shake it all away, like she's pretending it doesn't matter, but there's still a look that says it very much does matter on her face as she says, "Who was that other cell from?" Finn echoes it too. Yeah, who was that from?" Dr. Search seems surprised by the question. He looks at Finn and says, "Why, it was yours, of course. Your M count is one of the highest I've ever seen or heard of, outside of the aforementioned species of the child, that is." Finn looks confused, not even understanding how he could have got a blood sample from him in the first place, until he glances down at his arm, where the wound that the spores had started to infect was, which had been treated by the doctor. Wait, what exactly are you saying?" Finn asks, staring at the image of the cell that Dr. Search has once again brought up. It's Mara, who is still trying to hide just how distraught she is, who responds, "He's saying you're extremely strong with the Force, Finn." Finn then turns and looks at her, shaking his head as if there must be some kind of mistake, but Mara continues, "Perhaps this means it's time for the untrained one to finally get some training." Finn quickly says back, I told you, I had some. Not much, but some." Mara smiles at him, the first genuine smile we've seen from her, and she says, "And now it's time for a lot more." And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this part of the story and what you think might happen next. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.